Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Tonight on our news, 500 illegal Haitian migrants repatriated. PMH COVID occupancy down. A man murdered outside his workplace. And inside Grand Bahama International Airport, 2 years after Dorian. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, days after risking their lives in search of a better life, 500 Haitian migrants who were apprehended in Bahamian waters boarded Bahamas airplanes on Inagua for a short trip back to Haiti today. Bethany McDermott was there and filed this report.
The massive repatriation exercise started shortly after 8 Friday morning in Matthewtown, Inagua. 4 Bahamas Air flights, each carrying around 125 migrants, took off from Inagua's airport. Immigration Minister Keith Bell and National Security Minister Wayne Monroe traveled to this southern island to oversee the exercise.
No resources will be spared as all involved agencies work towards addressing the situation. In the face of unprecedented levels of Haitian migrant activity that has inundated countries throughout the region, the government has taken decisive action to scale up operations.
Now we're standing on board the HMBS Lawrence Major, the Defense Force ship that's housing more than 400 migrants, waiting to be processed and then repatriated. We also went by the Deliverance Household of Faith that's housing more migrants. The pastor there telling us that the decision to open the church's doors was an act of faith.
Just compassion and doing what God would have us to do. We are our brother's keeper, and so we ought to look out for each other.
When we arrived, the migrants were sitting on the floor and a foul smell emanated from the church. Once the church was cleared, officers moved the 428 migrants from that Defense Force vessel into the facility. At least one pregnant woman and a few children were seen among the group on board the vessel. Royal Bahamas Defense Force Captain Glenn McPhee is responsible for the Southern Command. He said the force has launched Operation Blue Thumb, a maritime blockade strategy which essentially blocks off the southern border.
To date, we have interdicted or apprehended in excess of 1,000 irregular or illegal migrants coming to our shores.
He added the RBDF has sufficient boots on the ground to ensure the safety and security of residents. Monroe had this warning for those thinking to make the risky journey.
The journey by boat to the Bahamas is a dangerous one, and we have deployed our assets and resources to prevent entry into our territorial waters. When intercepted, you will be quickly processed and return to your homeland.
The recent influx of migrants follow months of instability in Haiti after its president was assassinated in July and a deadly earthquake struck the island nation 1 month later. Reporting for Our News, I'm Bethany McDermott.
Amid a long and deadly third wave of COVID-19 cases, Princess Margaret Hospital Administrator Mary Walker says occupancy has dropped, but she says the situation is still serious. Our people are still being admitted and workers are tired. Kaya Joaquin reports.
The hospital administrator says when it comes to capacity here at PMH, things aren't as bad as they were a few weeks ago, but it's still very serious.
I would just like to watch those peaks and troughs because they are monitored by week, by epi week. And sometimes you could have a down epi week and then next week it just shoots right back up.
After months of operating at capacity with patients having to stay outside under a tent, the occupancy of COVID patients lingers between the 70s and 80s, according to PMH Administrator Mary Walker. Still pretty serious, but a step in the right direction. However, Walker says she doesn't want to speak too fast.
Over the last 7 to 10 days, we have not been in the 90s and hitting 100 with the inpatients. And so we're seeing what we would call, and we don't like to call it a lull because every time we say that, something happens. So we're seeing in the 70s and 80s of the patient count now for COVID. And we're hoping that that's an indication that the Bahamian public are doing their best to follow the guidelines.
The third wave remains serious as more people die because of the deadly virus. According to the latest dashboard, 130 COVID cases were reported yesterday, with 89 on New Providence and surprisingly 11 on Mayaguana. 146 cases remain in hospital, with 19 in intensive care. The people feeling the brunt of this third wave, those working in the hospital.
Our greatest need is staff. Our staff are tired. Our staff are exhausted. That's the greatest thing, and we see it, and we try to support them as best we can. Both from a physical standpoint and a psychological standpoint, because we know they need that as well.
With restrictions seemingly loosening a bit, Walker said there has been serious concern over whether new infections and hospitalizations could go up again.
Absolutely. That was our most grave concern, that is what we would see manifest. And so we're keeping our fingers and toes crossed, and we'll see.
Then there's the situation at the morgue, which had been over capacity to the point of bodies being kept in a cooler trailer.
We did get additional capacity, and we're seeming to manage what we're doing over there, notwithstanding the fact that the staff complement still has not improved there. And we really need to get more what we would call mortuary attendants to help us there, and so we'll be continuing to look for persons who can manage that type of work.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
In other news, one day after Commissioner of Corrections Charles Murphy was sent on administrative leave, National Security Minister Wayne Monroe shooting down suggestions of a conflict of interest. Monroe announced yesterday that Deputy Commissioners of Corrections Bernadette Murray and Doan Clare, who were stationed at the Ministry of National Security, were ordered to return to the prison. His law firm, Monroe and Associates, represented Murray and Clare in 2019 when they filed a lawsuit against the government.
I can't appoint a new Commissioner of Corrections because that's not a power that resides in the minister. I, yesterday, didn't appoint any Deputy Commissioners of Corrections. They're substantive office holders. The reality is that if there's a case where there may be liability on me, up to criminal liability for gross negligence manslaughter, because all prisoners are the wards of the state. If you don't act in a way that's responsible to discharge your duty and somebody dies or is seriously injured, you are criminally responsible.
Monroe explained that 3 matters are under investigation and revealed it could result in an independent investigation.
Fooling around with people's liberty is serious business. Interfering with the liberty of a subject is serious business. Anything that impacts it being done incorrectly must be investigated. If, for instance, the matter escalates, you will find that there will not be any internal investigation, and there'll likely have to be an independent investigation for somebody who would render a report that could then be acted on.
Amid pushback over a proposed COVID testing policy, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, Chester Cooper, says he plans on meeting with Atlantis executives in the very near future. Jasmine Brown reports.
We have a meeting with the senior executive of Atlantis. I can tell you there have been some adjustments in the policy. I don't want to be the one to make those announcements. But suffice to say, we look forward to working hand in hand with our major partners in the tourism industry.
On Thursday, Minister of Labor and Immigration Keith Bell told reporters that Atlantis would be postponing the policy, which would require unvaccinated employees to pay for their own weekly COVID tests at a discounted rate. The policy, which was scheduled to take effect today, did not sit well with the Bahamas Hotel Catering and Allied Workers Union.
I think it's an issue between the employer and the employee. There's some concerns about employees paying, etc. It's important that there is always a harmonious relationship between employee-employer. I'm confident that there's commitment on all sides to ensure that we work harmoniously to grow our tourism industry and grow our country.
Several businesses in the country have also mandated that staff pay for their own COVID tests. Cooper says while this remains an issue between the employee and employer, the situation has sparked concern. Atlantis began its phased reopening on December 10th with the Royal Towers and Harborside Marina after being closed for nearly 10 months due to COVID-19.
The pandemic has been a very difficult time for business, especially in the tourism space. It's called for adjustments in policy, and I am delighted that we are engaged already, and we will work hand in hand to continue to advance tourism in our country. In speaking with some hotel properties and owners and managers already, they are likewise optimistic about what they're seeing over the next few weeks.
Now, the tourism minister says he's hoping the upward trend with tourism numbers continues this fall. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Shifting gears, a man was shot and killed in front of his place of employment this morning. Police press liaison ASP Audley Peters says when officers arrived at the scene on Robinson Road near Morley Street, they met the victim's body lying in front of the door of the business.
On the arrival of our first responders, they met a male just in front of the business establishment door, unresponsive. On examining the body, they found multiple wounds that appeared to be gunshots.
This morning's killing was the 6th homicide reported in 5 days. Peters says the killer fled the scene in a southern direction.
Preliminary investigations are that this male is an employee of that business establishment, and as he was entering his workplace this morning, he was approached by a lone gunman who shot him several times about the body. We do not have an idea as to who this suspect is, so we're appealing to members of the public who may have any information as to what occurred here this morning to kindly assist us with that information so that we can make good headway with our investigations.
Well, beautiful conditions today. Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with the latest.
Thanks, Christina. Welcome everybody for your first look at weather on this first day of October. Nice conditions on the outside. Temperatures are slightly warmer. They're in the mid-80s as we speak. 84 outside our studios. Just a few clouds. We'll call it mild, factoring the relative humidity. Temperatures still feel comfortable in the mid to upper 80s, and your winds are out of the northeast at 9 knots. Satellite view, high pressure ridge trying to get its way into the Bahamas. Weak front boundary to the north will fall apart, but that high will continue to build in. So breezy conditions tonight through tomorrow, maybe a spotty shower or two expected. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, Haiti's dire situation, what international agencies are doing to help, and why the former health minister isn't sold on the idea of COVID vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds. Stay tuned. A new prime minister.
We have the right vision, the right policies, and the right team to take this country forward.
A new government and cabinet. And now a new legislative agenda.
We would be very, very aggressive and make them extremely accountable.
Join the RTV team as we give you full coverage of the opening of Parliament. October 6th, 9 a.m. Years after Hurricane Dorian sat on Grand Bahama for 2 torturous days, the island's international airport is still in desperate need of repair. During a tour of the airport, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper got to see just how bad it really is. Kyle Joaquin was there.
When we have heavy downpours of rain, sometimes rain actually comes. If you look at that, the crack in the roof.
In the control tower, the brain of the operation, there are cracks in the roof. On the floor, a blue bucket catches water when it rains. There is no elevator, meaning these employees must climb flights and flights of stairs just to get to work. It's just one part of Grand Bahama International Airport that remains damaged 2 years after Hurricane Dorian struck in 2019. Next to the tower, a badly damaged warehouse structure. Just looking at the walls, you can see just how strong the storm surge was. The floor and the ceiling ripped up, and firemen left to sit at 2 white tables.
This is Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister. These are the firemen.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism Chester Cooper and Grand Bahama Minister Ginger Moxie took a tour of the airport where they saw for themselves the sad state 2 years later. On the other side, a building in much better shape is used for domestic and international flight departures.
So once you check in at the counter, you proceed through the check-in area, which we'll go through next. Right here, you can notice that we have this strain up right now. We're doing some repurposing of the former Bahamas Customs and Immigration area.
Inside the airport, desks have been allocated for local and international airlines. At the moment, there is no pre-clearance.
How we manage the area, we try to assign gates. So out of this section, we have American and Silver. In that section, Bahamas Air and Flamingo actually departs in that area.
Okay.
So this isn't just international?
No.
It's a combination, right? So when they go through the security checkpoint, it's a TSA standard, so it's one requirement.
As you walk through the property, you can tell work is underway with signs that read, "Please pardon our appearance." Despite that, the customs and immigration station set up as normal for international arrivals.
We have our Chi-Cab agents. They actually move the bags, queue them over here, and the customers, once they clear immigration, they'll collect their bags, proceed to the Bahamas custom booth, and funnel out through the door. Right?
A pleasure. Welcome. Thanks so much. Nice and cool in here.
In late April, the Minnis administration signed a deal for the acquisition of the airport for $1, plus roughly $1 million in staff-related costs. But the question remains, where and how to build a bigger and better airport for Grand Bahama.
The plan was to, if you build it at least a floor high, because of flooding, with the flooding that was here in the last time.
The flood goes on.
Right.
How many feet of water we had?
Up to 18 to 20.
Yeah.
But the buildings are all up, built up 10 feet, and even with that, it
still had issues. Wow.
Cooper did not give an update after the tour, but one is expected on the way forward in the coming weeks. For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Well, the situation in Haiti is dire, according to the International Organization for Migration's mission to Haiti. In an interview with the United Nations, the IOM's chief of the mission to Haiti said thousands of Haitian nationals have been repatriated since September 19th, and even more are scheduled to return to Haiti.
The situation is very dire in Haiti right now. There are multiple crises, as we know. Areas controlled by the gangs. In the south, 3 departments are affected by the earthquake, political instability.
Giuseppe Lepret says most of the people being repatriated from the Americas left Haiti 4 to 5 years ago and are returning to Haiti with nothing.
We expect 6 to 7 flights per day, every day, and this will continue indefinitely until we have a different indication, of course, from the U.S. government and the Haitian government.
In addition, only 1 to 2% of Haiti's population has been vaccinated against COVID-19. Yesterday, the UN Refugee Agency, IOM, UNICEF, and the UN Human Rights Office called on countries to refrain from expelling Haitians without proper assessment of their individual protection needs and to offer protection and other legal stay arrangements. Well, former Minister of Health Dr. Dwayne Sands says he isn't convinced yet about the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine for children ages 5 to 11. This week, Pfizer announced it has submitted data to the United States Food and Drug Administration seeking to clear its vaccine for use in that age group.
As you see, we are now fully moving ahead with vaccination of teenagers from 12 to 17. I have 2 children in that age range that are now vaccinated. So that's different than a view that I held a year ago. At this time, let's look critically at the information that's presented. And if the data is strong enough, then certainly I have no reason adding my personal endorsement or my professional endorsement to that. But we need to look at this critically as we have every single step along the way.
According to NBC News, the FDA is expected to take at least several weeks to analyze the data collected in a trial that included more than 2,000 children. A formal request for emergency use authorization of the company's vaccine is also expected over the course of the next few weeks. In the meantime, Sands says his views evolve with the data.
I'm still not convinced, and I haven't seen the data. I will not withhold my view on it, but I'd like to see the data on which the recommendation is being made. I expect that this will continue to evolve.
When Our News returns, a newborn needs your help getting life-saving surgeries. And Commonwealth Brewery's kind gesture to frontline workers at PMH. The details when Our News returns. A new Prime Minister.
That we have the right vision, the right policies, and the right team to take this country forward.
A new government and cabinet. And now a new legislative agenda.
We will be very, very aggressive and make them extremely accountable.
Join the RTV team as we give you full coverage of the opening of Parliament, October 6th, 9 a.m. This is our news. Welcome back. The mother of a baby born with a heart defect is pleading for help, raising money to get him to the United States for a series of corrective surgeries. Jared Higgs has their story.
I go up there, I pray with him, and ask him to stay strong. Let me try my best.
Camera Darling gets emotional as she talks about her newborn son, who has been in hospital with a deformed heart since he was born on September 12th.
I don't wish this on nobody, honestly. Like, seeing him up there, it's just hard. Just have to stay really strong.
Jakari was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which affects blood flow to the heart. His 24-year-old mother found out after doctors in the neonatal ICU at PMH heard something unusual in his heartbeat.
I was ready for him to come home. So that's really heartbreaking when I found out what's going on with him.
A specialist saw Jakari at PMH where an echo was performed on his heart. It revealed several issues that will require multiple surgeries. A quote from a hospital in the United States came to $2 million. Darling simply doesn't have that kind of money.
I carried him for 9 months. I don't want to just lose him like that.
Our News interviewed Darling at her home. She says Jakari, who remains hospitalized, is fighting to live, but she believes the needles and tubes are causing him stress. Sadly, she isn't able to bond with her child, and her 5-year-old daughter hasn't been able to see her little brother. Darling was already warned by nurses that he may end up having a tough time fighting.
If his heart starts to give out, there's nothing they could be able to do, so they'll just, when that time comes, God forbid it don't come, but when it happens, they'll just call me so I could have my few moments with him.
If you want to help get Jakari to the United States for surgery, you can make a donation to the Royal Bank of Canada account of Kamarai Darling, account number 057757360951, Prince Charles Branch. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
Thanks, Jared. Well, frontline workers at Princess Margaret Hospital getting a little pick-me-up from corporate Bahamas today. Commonwealth Brewery donating packages containing some of its products as well as food as they fight to save lives during the pandemic.
Commonwealth Brewery, we're committed to the community of the Bahamas, and in any effort that we can possibly find to safeguard the health and well-being of our people, in any partnership, we take advantage of it. And so for years, we fostered a relationship with the blood bank through Vitamalt. And today is just an expansion of that, and this is only the beginning of what we have planned as we seek to reach out to the medical staff throughout the Bahamas to say thank you.
Hospital Administrator Mary Walker says it's good to see companies giving back and remembering those still in the fight. Well, coming up, Sun Oil steps up to assist a local charity. Stay with us. A new Prime Minister.
We have the right vision, the right policies, and the right team to take this country forward.
A new government and cabinet. And now a new legislative agenda.
We would be very, very aggressive and make them extremely accountable.
Join the RTV team as we give you full coverage of the opening of Parliament, October 6th, 9 a.m. Welcome back to our news. Tropical Storm Sam is not expected to impact the Bahamas, but how will the weather be this weekend? Greg is back in the Weather Center with a look ahead.
Thanks again, Christine, and welcome back, everybody, for your second look at weather. Of course, the tropics is the name of the game, and that's what we're looking at right now. We have Sam Solode, a very powerful Category 4 system, moving towards the northwest, eventually turning more towards the north, should pass to the east of the Bermuda area. Those guys will be spared. Some tropical storm conditions expected, but that system will continue to remain a very powerful storm as it continues to push towards the north. Victor out there, almost a hurricane right now with winds of up to 65 to 70 miles per hour. Will continue on that northwest track as well, but staying in the Atlantic. So both of these systems becoming fish storm. If you notice on the corner of the screen there's also a very strong tropical storm moving off the African coast. Beaching and boating forecast for all areas tonight through tomorrow. We have a caution flag posted as those swells from Sam will be affecting us. Northeast to east winds 15 to 20 knots, seas will be running 4 to 6 feet, but up to 8 feet along Atlantic exposed shorelines. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast through Wednesday. That's a look at our weather. Have a safe night and a beautiful weekend. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Greg. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has not slowed the charitable efforts of Sun Oil Limited, which stepped up recently to support Hands for Hunger and 2 major sporting events. Executive Director of Hands for Hunger, Keisha Ellis, says Shell has been a consistent supporter of Hands for Hunger for more than 10 years, helping to keep the nonprofit's trucks on the road to collect and deliver food. Over the summer, Sun Oil also teamed up with the Bahamas Aquatics Federation to sponsor the 49th National Swim Championships, the last qualifier for the Tokyo Olympics. Sun Oil also supported the B3A's National Track and Field Championships, another important Olympic qualifier for Team Bahamas. Marketing Manager Rufus Johnson Jr. says Sun Oil remains committed to fueling growth for people through its investment in communities. Well, thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Christina Dragovich. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.